Do you think that there is a closing window in terms of
absolutely, and Gap's about winning the war. It's not worried about the battles. It's about the war.
I think that a lot of this has been quite heavy, which I don't think is going to faze too many people. And I'll tell you why. I think that, and this is the gap I'm trying to fill. Excuse the pun. It's being able for people to see you exactly for what you are, and it's someone who's very frustrated with the Constitution, very frustrated with its execution, and you started a party with experience behind you that is attempting to bridge that gap between Canberra, the politicians, and the people. That's what I see from this conversation. I really do. Welcome everyone to the Conversations on Thin Ice. This week I'm with former Senator. Did you say Rod? Is that how people say your name?
Look, Rod Culleton. But that's a worry when you say it's on thin ice. But
that's the funny thing, because that's the thing. These conversations, they really are. They're becoming rarer and rarer. The intellectual honesty seems to be something that's just not in high demand anymore. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm sure there's a lot of viewers that know Rod from the GAP Party, the Great Australia Party. Many of you probably don't know what I do. I run these Conversations on Thin Ice. I also run a weekly show called The Arc, where I go through the weekly things that are happening. And I really enjoy giving the mic to people that I think are going to really lead to a lot more intellectual honesty in our political dialogue and allow us to actually move our country forward. Now, Rod, I just off the bat, because this has just happened within the last week, we saw an absolute disaster happen in Western Australia in the election for the Liberal Party and the Nationals. Maybe not for yourself. Some might say it's open season for you now. But we did see a disaster in the state election and a situation where the party over there has been completely demolished for the Liberals, and the Nationals are now the opposition leaders. What's your general take on why you thought that happened?
Well, the leader for the Liberal Party, Zach Kirkup, although came out with some, well, first of all, he came out prematurely and basically hung up his boots and said, I'm leaving the field before the final siren. And as a leader, you just don't do that. You obviously, you got to be like a captain of a ship. You've got to go down with the ship. So that was very disappointing. And straight away, we tipped that the Liberal Party, not just only in Western Australia, but certainly federal, is finished. And we're seeing this play out now, pardon me. But Zach Kirkup came out with a policy on renewable energy, canning coal, and that policy, I would refer it to as a Kirkup type policy, basically, to be quite blunt. So he said all the wrong things. He's not a strong leader. And look, is there a perfect leader? Perhaps not, but you've basically got to make sure that if that's the role that you're playing, you've got to stay out in front and bat it out to the end. It doesn't matter what your score is. You just got to keep going, because you never know. A week in politics is a very long time. So they spend a lot of money on campaigning. But to be honest, do you want a person that was involved in the state election? Labor were always tipping for a landslide. McGowan, I call it McGowan Island now, Western Australia. It's certainly not the state of Western Australia with the information that we know, but McGowan's Island, he will move to make it McGowan Island, and we've got to look at opposing that, and the Liberals are not there to do the job now. So we have to, the minor or micro parties have to step up. And, it's real concerning times, but it was a hard election because it was struggling with the COVID-19 lockdowns. McGowan played that fiddle pretty well. He was always in front of the TV, had a lot of exposure, and he basically went for broke because he knew he was going to win in the landslide, because he would have measured up Zach Kirkup. And he basically took all the 3 mil material on printing the core flutes, and he just bogged down all the political advertising agencies, running him out of ink. The machines were breaking down. He was just spewing out campaign material because he knew that the state had to pay it. He was going to get over his 4%. So for a guy that's very concerned about how he spends money, he certainly didn't hold back on his election. However, it's only early days, and I think he thinks he's got it in a complete landslide. He has, prima facie, I guess, but we'll see what happens as we go down. But it's a worrying concern now that Liberals perhaps only hold at best 3 seats. And even the Nationals, because Nationals are a lapdog for the Liberal Party. I mean, I was a National voter for 45 years, and all I've ever seen, the National Party has strangled the bush to death. So, but yet a lot of farmers, there's no other alternative, and a lot of other farmers, just basically come out and vote Nationals. But I can tell you right now, Nationals will be jumping like a flea onto a different dog's back now, and they'll just basically shut down the bush with Labor. Which is really sad.
How do you explain? I mean, I'm very empathetic to the minor party cause. How do you explain the collapse in the minor party's votes over there? I mean, I think in One Nation we saw it collapse quite a bit. A party you were formerly a part of. We saw even the Greens, the Nationals, and some of the other minor parties also collapse. What do you lead that to, and how do you think that the Gap Party will be any better?
Well, look, speaking from experience, first of all, Gap is about form and substance. And what you see a lot of political parties are, they only bring form to the table. So, I've got personal experience with Pauline Hanson. There's unfinished business with Pauline Hanson for sure. But Pauline Hanson, like I say to a lot of people in layman terms, reminds me of this racy looking red fiery ski boat that's floating on the river, but it's got no prop. It makes a lot of noise and starts well, but when you put it in gear, there's no prop. And a lot of these political parties promise the world to people, and they just don't deliver. And they get in there, they do horse deals, horse trade, and which I wouldn't do. We didn't do that out of our office. I mean, I had Matthias Cormann and Michaelia Cash coming to my office quite regularly, even Albanese. He was trying to sell his elbow beer to me too. And not that I'd be interested in that. But it's what do we need? The micro parties basically only come, they're trying to bake a cake with one ingredient. That's really what they're trying to do. And you need all ingredients to bake a cake. And it's like anything. And it's like, no mandatory vax. That's all they come with. And, certain other, just daylight savings party and all this sort of stuff is just one policy, so to speak. So what we have to do is we have to fix the law in this country first, because that is there, and policies are secondary, because once we get back and get control and people understand that the power vests with them, because that's the definite legal term of the Commonwealth, then we can move forward. We've got the right machine. They've just parked it up in the shed, and that's what GAP's about. GAP's gone over, as I have been a federal senator in Parliament in exile. Have certainly passed all the courses and everything to fulfil that constitutional duty or public duty to all Australians, not just the constituents of Western Australia. And it was a real eye-opener for me, because I'm a farmer, and basically I just voted Nationals because, I thought who else do you vote for in the bush? But God, now that I see, my eyes are really open, and I've had a real wake-up call, and my message is now, given my experience, I have to come out now and inform the public, because if I don't, what sort of a person am I to sort of sit quiet on my sworn public duty to uphold the laws of the Commonwealth to the Australian people? So.
There's no doubt that the National Party's failed at their job at representing the rural Australia. In New South Wales, we saw in 2019, whether you agree with it or not, the priority that was passed, the first thing that they passed after the 2019 state election in New South Wales, was abortion rights for women, something that no one had been prosecuted under, yet they felt that that was the priority rather than the other priorities that they ran on, like helping our farmers. We were in a drought at the time, severe drought, and maybe some would say we still are now. And rather than actually getting aid out to those farmers, the Nationals pretty much led the way in getting abortion rights in New South Wales. And a lot of people felt like that was a massive stab in the back. So I guess my question about leading off that is you've brought on board Pete Evans, and Pete Evans is obviously New South Wales based. Do you feel like the Gap Party has a national sort of appeal, or would you say it's dominantly for your state?
No, look, it has national appeal because I am a country boy. Okay, you can take the boy out of the, you can't take the boy out of the bush. You can't take. He's been brought up around that environment. But let me just go back to the Nationals. Okay, you got Barnaby Joyce, who I know Barnaby well. Barnaby always looks like he gets out for a duck in cricket because he's always sort of, dragging the bat. Or he's lost $1 million at the races. I mean, Barnaby's like this guy that has this big persona, but it's all about Barnaby. But can I tell you about Barnaby? Every time I can honestly tell you, Barnaby and wouldn't know which end of a sheep ate grass, and that's a fact. He comes out like he's this big farmer, and honestly, wouldn't know anything about it, because if he did, he'd understand that the pain that our rural primary producers are going through. I mean, we've looked at the water going right past dairies, and cattle are dying because they can't get water, or they can't. He hasn't come out and said, okay, they come out and say, well, the Nationals say, oh, well, if the farmer can't be viable on his land, he shouldn't be on there. Well, you know what? You ought to think about that when he goes and buys a kilo of steak out of the supermarket. I mean, that's not what he's there for. So we got to have true representation. So it's a bit like with Peter. Pete, sorry, I should say Pete, not Peter. Pete Evans has his mantra, or his message that he wants to bring to the public, and rightly so, because that's democracy. But we have to understand, it's like me. I love farming and whatever, and there may be some people that have got jobs in mining or whatever, although I don't knock extractable industries. I mean, we need extractable industries. I mean, that's there, but there has to be proper management with it, and make sure that we're not, certainly the proper leases, and whoever is entitled to the royalties must be a level playing field. So, but when you become an elected member of parliament, you're a public trustee, and even though you may have differences with some people, but you have to represent those people. If they're in the state of Western Australia, it doesn't matter whether they, have the most outrageous beliefs. You have to, true representation is taking that all on board and working with them, and certainly putting it and how that would apply to law, or how that could sort of basically be prepared, or certainly be tested, whether it's passed the parliamentary process, because you're talking about the Nationals coming out with an abortion or whatever. But I mean, how far away is that from agriculture? So the whole thing is what we have to do is we're at 1 minute to midnight. Either Australians are going to realise that they want to keep this great country and keep democracy and free speech, or they've got to realise and say, what has the major parties, and I include the Nationals as a major party, because they've sort of entrenched with the Liberal Party, but what have they done? And to me, they've just killed the country. And if we don't now say, okay, let's look at how we can fix this. And I know GAP doesn't want to be GAP's about remedy. Okay, I hear a lot of people come and say, look, we can do this and whatever. GAP's about remedy. How may we get remedy? Where's our constitutional guarantees found? What's the law? And apply the law. Has it passed the democratic process through Parliament? does the contrary intention appear? Until the Parliament otherwise provides, we're going back to the real law, and that's the Commonwealth. And whether you love it, hate it, or don't agree, we do run under a Constitution Act. They are the laws of this country. Currently, at the moment, we are not running under that with the current administration. And it's our duty. Ignorance plays no defence in a court of law, and ignorance plays no defence when it comes to representation of Parliament. You're either going to hold them to account and you want true representation, or go down to the pub and have another frothy and let your country go. And some people don't want to do that, but some people do. And I think once we get the message out there and all go together and certainly start rowing in the same direction, we'll be a far better nation and we'll get control of our country. But the majors have got to go. One's gone. We've got to let the other one go as well. And we're about to undergo that process.
What solutions can you put forward for, you mentioned free speech. I think the biggest one we've seen this last year has been the censorship of free speech online from big tech. What solutions is the Gap Party putting forward to address that?
Well, we believe in democracy, okay? And democracy is about free speech. It's not a belief. We have democracy in this country. So it's not a belief, and it's not it's what do we need to do? Well, so they can't stop free speech. They just can't. And there's nowhere in law they can shut down free speech. So what we have to do is, in effect, without getting too technical, put the presumption, or set the bar and go back to them and say, how may you point to what law that says this can impede free speech? And the government won't be able to answer that. And that's really more about GAP holding it to account. So GAP has the policies, and the policies are available to all Australians to go on our website and our GAP app to have a look at all our policies, engage in our policies. But certainly we won't be allowing free speech to be diminished in this country. And GAP is taking strategic move. It's done genuine steps to actually a lot of FOI requests, a lot of really making sure that the foundation is solid, so that when we all go forward politically, we're on solid ground. We're not on shifting sand. And I tend to think a lot of parties come out and just they promise the world, and they get in there and basically fall for the trap. Whereas GAP's about involving the people, having our candidates come up, give their sworn public duty to the public under Section 49 of the Constitution, or 42 of the Constitution, and have skin in the game. And that's why we really work with our candidates. So we pick them, carefully choose them, not me, but the National Selection Committee chooses those candidates and what they can offer. And most times we like to see, we don't mind a bit of dirt under the fingernails, to be honest. They've had a go, a couple of scratches on the face. Who cares? It's about being in the game. And they've played a good game, and we just want them to make sure that they enter a good team, and we give them that support. So we have a guy that Jason Reynolds, who's in effect a mentor, or he basically swings between the candidates, make sure that they are properly conditioned, because the media can, it takes a lot of guts to put your hand up to go as a candidate, and you'd realise once the media hook into you, it can ruin their lives. It can ruin relationships in families. I mean, I've had, my wife's side of the family, with my brother-in-law certainly strained, and it's a tough gig, but we've got to make sure that they are insulated from that. Otherwise, they're not representing people. If they're spending more time on trying to manage problems, they're not spending on time, getting on with things for the better of the country. And that's how we have to do it, because a lot of good politicians go in there with all good intents and purposes, but comes flying out the other end trying to do the right thing. Well, I can vouch for that. So I take nothing away from my maiden speech.
Yeah, no, I listened to your maiden speech. It was very fascinating, especially you talking about the Constitution and how we've been drifting away from it. Do you think that perhaps Canberra would benefit from more down to earth people. And why do you think that Australians, because we do keep doing it, why do you think we keep electing people that then turn their back on us?
Why do people keep going to church on Sunday? It's just something. I think it's a bit like this COVID-19. You know, like people put on a mask, so everyone puts on a mask. You know, sign this, scan that. But you know what? There's actually no law. They're just basically getting their consent to do it. Once you consent and give up your rights, there's no, you know, nothing can touch you in laws. So we have to, now is the time to show something better. And it's always a tough gig because, you know, parties need a lot of money to keep things moving and whatever. We don't take donations from the big end of town. And I'm sure, you know, a lot of these political parties be getting a spin-off from this new Pfizer vaccination. I mean, look, you go down the street. I'm actually in Kalgoorlie at the moment, and you go down the street and you ask people, do they trust politicians? Or what do you think about a politician? You got to duck. In actual fact, at some point, it's probably better to go out with a shield and a helmet and some, because they don't. It's really sad. They don't dislike them. They actually detest them, hate them, and yet they go vote for them. And to me, that's what we're just trying to work out. I think.
Why do they keep punching themselves in the face? I've never understood it.
No, but you and I go vote as well.
Yeah.
You know, if they don't vote, well, it's interesting you say that, because I was a scrutineer just at the WA election, and there was some pretty, can I say, disgusting remarks on the ballot papers. You know, you such and such, you're just a complete such and such. Yeah. I mean, talk about put one above the line. They certainly put one above the line, I can tell you. And it was it was very offensive.
Yeah.
But that shows the frustration and anger of a lot of people. There's a lot of people not voting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people not voting. They just say, I don't want to. Who do you get?
Yeah.
So it's as a party, it's, you know, you're sort of coming in with this stigma. If you go out and introduce yourself to people and say, you know, it's Rod Culleton, former federal senator for Western Australia, you know, we're now with the Great Australian Party, and they go, yeah, just another bloody, you know, another brand on the market with all the other morons or post pissers. Like, you know, they're all the same post pissers. And you know what? A lot of the times, well, certainly with the other parties they are. But what we've now got to do, GAP's gone a lot further. It's gone to London. It's filed a matter in London, which has got the governor and the deputy governor, the Chief Justice of the West Australian Supreme Court, and the Attorney General as respondents in CO 588/2020. It's been sitting with the judge for about 8 months, but it's a good one. And we have a case manager in the United Kingdom, because they always said you can't go to the United Kingdom and file because they don't have jurisdiction. But I always remember in the old days, they said you couldn't sail a boat past the horizon, you'd fall off the earth. So we set sail, put the spinnakers up and set sail for London and got it filed. And I know, and this is a fact, this has come from my case manager, that the Solicitor General of the UK Parliament constantly rings in weekly for an update on CO 588/2020, because it is a very, very, very watertight application, and it's written precisely to our laws of the Commonwealth, not to Australian law. And that's what they say. They go, Mr. Culleton, we can't hear a matter under Australian law. And all we said at the registry of the court in London, no, registrar, in all due respect, this is not about Australian law, this is about Commonwealth law. Oh, yes, well, we can file that. How easy was that? Yet every barrister says you can't take an appeal to the Privy Council.
Interesting, because just because it's unprecedented doesn't mean that you can't do it.
Yeah, well, we've done it. we've done it.
Done it now, yeah. So
Yeah.
hang on,
And
what's the point? Forgive me, I don't understand. What's the point in actually applying over there? Do you want to start a political party in the UK as well? Is that what you've done?
no, because what Australia does is it runs under a UK Act. Okay. It runs under a UK Act.
Yeah.
At Federation, that was agreed. You know, we all became states and territories, and that's how we've got to run. That's what the law states. And until we have a referendum or the people want to become a republic and they vote on that, I'm not sure how that goes, because to me, you can't get rid of the Constitution. That's a good thing about the framers, and I think people like Wayne Glue would agree to that. And I tend to agree too. But anyway, let's leave that argument to one side. But all I know is that we are a Commonwealth, and we run under a UK Act. And I'm, you know, I think you would know that, and a lot of people would understand it. And certainly I'll just hold this up, but certainly when you get into Parliament, this is the manual that you are given as a senator, and you go very much to the first chapter. So, you know, I don't take it from me making the claim. It's certainly the law. But if I go to the very first chapter of my constitutional duties as a senator, the Senate and its constitutional role, you know, and the Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia. Well, hang on, they're calling it the Australian government.
Yeah.
So, you know, so let me just tell you the first paragraph. The Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia, which is given the power to make laws for the Commonwealth by the Constitution, has two elected houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. So there it is. It's all run by the Constitution, and you know that, and I know that. But Australia's running under Australia Act, and that's not a UK Act. And so the matter of CO 588 2020 is right on pitch with a domestic act known as the Australia Act, and it's asking why the Australian government is running under the Australia Act and why we don't have a Commonwealth Parliament running under the UK Act, which is where the senators must sit. So, in effect, I don't make the claim, but the law makes a claim that every parliamentarian in there is clearly a usurper. And that's why I was always Senator Rod Culleton in exile. I spotted it. I even caught the High Court without the Queen. I mean, you know, love the Queen, you know, don't love the Queen, whatever you want to do. It's live with it. It's the concept, you know, it's an office like a senator's office, and live with the concept, because that's our law. And until that's changed, but you know, this thing about shutting down free speech, you can't do it under the Constitution. It just can't be done. So we have to get back on track. And you know, Labor have done the damage. I mean, here's another one right here. You know, the Constitutional Report of 1988, which was done by the highest minds, legal minds in this country. Let me just take you to this, because this is what we found in Parliament, and it's all been there. It all is there. You know, it's all been signed off, that we've departed from our laws of our Commonwealth. I mean, you know, how much more do we have to say? So come on, Australia, get behind Great Australian Party, because we have the remedy, and that's why this party is important, because I think a lot of other ones haven't had someone in the Senate. If they have, it may have been with a major party. Look, I went in there to fight the banks because what they were doing to our farmers. And look, I got in there. It doesn't matter how I got there, and I was there long enough to do the job. And I will make sure that I finish that job off.
Yeah.
That's my commitment to the Australian people.
Obviously, I've invited you on, Rod, to promote the Great Australia Party to my audience so they could see a bit more about what you're about. I guess my question would be, are there any other parties because the Gap Party is not in every state, are they?
Well, 7th of April 2019, 2019 was when we federally got it registered. And can I just, I'm going to have a real chat to my mother, actually, to be honest. I have to sort of go.
Your mentor, would you say?
Well, I'm going to have to go back to her and say, why is it that I'm always time compressed when either I want to file an affidavit or submissions in court? You know, it's just done it in haste at the 11th hour or something breaks down. But so when we registered the political party, the Australian Electoral Commission took its time and, you know, basically got us registered 4 weeks out before the election. And it happened really with this WA party as well. So we got registered 5 weeks before the state election. And, you know, so it was a short run up to a bloody long jump.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I have to have a chat to her about that. I'm not sure why it always becomes compressed like that, but it just seems to follow me, unfortunately. But getting back to, you know, GAP is national and it's going to be a player. You don't have to form government to have the balance of power, but we're more focused on the High Court of Parliament because that's where you know, no one really heard about the Senate. And one, you know, I guess no one can ever take away my maiden speech, which is, you know, obviously got them stirred up to get rid of me. They knew that I certainly wasn't going to be a team player in their team. I was going in clean skin, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and to do the job, you know, and I did do the job. But in saying that, we have to we have to look at what has been achieved and the genuine steps that I took when I was in Parliament to bring back the laws of the Commonwealth, because like I said, just to reiterate what I said earlier, the legal definition of Commonwealth is the people's authority and power. And if you're not under the laws of the Commonwealth, then the people are subordinate or subservient to the Parliament. And you've got to remember, when people go to the ballot box, they put their power of attorney into a person that's like running for a great Australian party to be their public trustee and represent them in Parliament. That's the whole. That's why you have a Parliament. But the Parliament today is has risen above federally and state has risen above the powers of the people, and we just got to switch that back.
Interesting. So basically, you would definitely think the GAP party is literally the only party that's got the knowledge, got the intellectual honesty, got the ability, the right message or on message on this to actually make a change. Any other party that gets elected, you don't have the faith that they could bring any positive sort of change for that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, no, look, that's perfectly fine.
We're you know, there are. I'm talking the majors. Certainly, you know, I look at other you know, leaders that are going out there. I've yet to see where they're offering the remedy. So if they're not offering the remedy, the inference can be drawn is that they don't know where to seek the remedy. So, you know, I look at a lot of guys, you know, Wayne Glue is one of them. He's been chipping away for years. I've looked at a lot of other guys been chipping away for years, saying all the right things, but not getting the remedy. And that's no offence. Because you have to listen to what they say. I mean, a lot of the stuff that Wayne Glue says is correct. I mean, you know, he's the old school, and he's bringing about what the law is. But they just ignore him. And but they tend to fall over because they think, well, you know, this is what the law says. You can't go into Parliament because, you know, it's unlawful to do so. Well, then if that's the case, where are you going to get the remedy? Well, we haven't found that out yet. But the key words to put in this before is, yes, we all know that, but for the purpose of, go in there, stand up, because you can't prorogue a parliament that's not sitting with license. That's a nonsense. You got to stand it down. You can only prorogue a parliament that's actually a parliament. And we don't have parliaments today, state and Commonwealth. We don't have parliaments. And I'm not making the claim. The constitutional report makes the claim. The Constitution makes the claim. And Odger's Senate practice manual makes the claim. And the media said to me, you know, we never heard about the Senate until you came to town, Senator Culleton. And then you've pulled 17, senators and 2 House of Reps into the mud pool over how many. Look at those guys were found ineligible sitting in Parliament. Can I honestly say, you know, Nick Xenophon, who was really sad. I spoke to Nick Xenophon about 3 weeks ago, and he admitted he's become a recluse. I couldn't believe it, because I'm looking at calling Nick Xenophon back with my matters that are unfinished. But you know, he'd become a recluse, but he stood up for me because I said, Nick, I need you to stand up and tell that president, which was Stephen Parry, who wasn't found to be the president at the time, although, you know, they say that he swore to a foreign power, you know, being a British subject. How may that's a nonsense, because the UK Constitution, the Commonwealth Constitution at Clause 2 says it must be the UK, the Queen of the United Kingdom. See, this is where the whole government was, just grappling to try and steady the ship, because I was pulling them all into the mud, because one thing, if I'm going to go down, mate, I'll go down with a smoking tail. And look what it did. But there were a lot there that couldn't sit in Parliament. You know, lawyers can't sit in Parliament because they've sworn to a foreign power. They're subject to 44 of the Constitution. Not only just politicians are subject to 44 of the Constitution, any Commonwealth officer, judge, any health officer, whatever. Anyone that says they have the power, no, they're all subject to 44.
Hang on a sec. The whole fiasco with the different senators and I think some MPs that had the problems where they had citizenship, that was you. You called that out. You said it's not right. And then there was the big sort of, what's it called, domino effect. And then there were a few resign. You pointed it out, and then it sort of brought it to the surface.
Yeah, like I had a question. It was funny because Bruce Bell was like one of those flies, bush flies in the corner of your eye.
Yeah.
He was the guy that did a common informers action on me and, became a pest. But look, he was within his rights to do it. These things cost money. But anyway, as it turned out, it was frivolous and vexatious, incurable and deficient. It was just disgraceful. But give him credit. He served a writ on me in my Senate office, and I looked at the writ and I thought, well, hang on a minute. They're sending me down to the Court of Disputed Returns, or the High Court. And I can tell you I've learned a lot about the Court of Disputed Returns. I'm a real whiz on that now. I can give you the tip. I've certainly invested a lot of money in it, I can tell you. But I looked at the writ and I thought, well, hang on, what's empowering the writ? It's not in the name of the Queen. Anyway, it was just so happened Pauline Hanson, I think Brian Burson at the time was going to ask a question, but it took a long time for Brian Burson, to be honest, no offence to him, to create a question. And a lot of the times he never created them. He had to have other people. He used to come to our office and ask for assistance. I mean, that's how good he was. But anyway, we saw that. But I thought, you know what, I'm going down to this Attorney General Brandis, and I'm going to ask him why the High Court's not issuing its writs in the name of the Queen. And that's the question that I can tell you will save Australia, because the High Court was sitting outside 77I. It's supposed to sit as a United Kingdom court, and it's not in jurisdiction. And that's why the High Court had to keep saying, don't make no more referrals.
Yeah.
And it's just sad that it's come to this, like it took, I'm not trying to be a hero.
But you did
But I have
now after 100, however many years, decades. It's kind of embarrassing.
Well, they just go, Australians, what they want Australians to do is work on general acceptance or, a truism, well, you didn't challenge it at the time. That's not what our law's about. Our law's about remedy. And all our courts are, but Pauline at the time gave me the control of the Royal Commission. That's why Malcolm Turnbull and ScoMo kept saying, well, we can't call a Royal Commission. No, we're not having a Royal Commission. Do you want to know the honest truth why they couldn't call a Royal Commission? Because I kept saying to Malcolm Turnbull, how may you call a Royal Commission under the Royal Commission Act of 1903, off memory, in the name of Queen of Australia? That's a bush chook. Has to be under the seal of the Commonwealth. Where's that? And that's why he wouldn't call a Royal Commission. And that's why they had to get rid of me out of Parliament and then come out and say, oh, well, we're now calling a Royal Commission, because I actually wrote the terms and reference for the Royal Commission. He took my terms of reference. I've got them here printed out. Anyone can have a look. And he changed it.
So every Royal Commission that's been called since then has still made the same error, right?
Yeah, it's been a Culleton's Royal Commission. That's why they can't prosecute. No one gets prosecuted. Oh, yes, well, we're going to lose his job and we're going to poke him over under that tree. But they don't go. The bankers should have gone to jail. The bankers need to go to jail. Because you know what? They go silent. They're doing it again.
Yeah.
We had farmers that tipped 20 litres of petrol over themselves, never defaulted on their fifth generation farms, walked into open fires, shot themselves. But do the bankers care? No. Did the Royal Commission threw all those submissions out?
Yeah,
it was disgraceful. That's why Haynes, when he put his recommendations to Frydenberg, did you see the look on his face? Because we even said to Haynes, you're not in jurisdiction. That's why he just went, look at the body language. He was caught out. Haynes was sitting in a Clayton's Royal Commission, and he knew it, because you can't empower a Royal Commission under adopted title, because the constitutional report of 1988 and the Senate says it's got to be under the Queen of the United Kingdom, not this Queen of Australia, which is a bush chook in a dress, perhaps. I don't know. But it's just this adopted title that gives no power. There's nothing there.
You've certainly got my attention, Rod, especially on the whole, the fact that you pointed out the dual citizenship fiasco is quite entertaining and holds weight. If I was to step into the shoes of the mainstream media right now, I would basically be saying and I wouldn't give you a chance to answer this question, but I would be basically saying to you, these are just conspiracies. You have no legal background. Why should I listen to some of these claims that you're making about it?
Because I'm not making the claim. The law is making the claim. But I'll test you on this one. Do you want to test?
Let's have a look. Test me. I don't know anything.
Okay, the media go out and they say I'm a bankrupt.
Yeah.
I am not a bankrupt. The Australian Electoral Commission referred me to the Australian Federal Police because I filled out a nomination form. 44.3 says you can't be a bankrupt or an undischarged bankrupt. Otherwise, there's you fill out a stat dec. That's bloody serious. Do you think I'd be that silly to fill out a stat dec and go to jail? No, I wouldn't do it to my family. I'm going to ask you this. Who am I to know? I know my constitutional duty as a senator. And am I a lawyer? Yes, I am a lawyer. Am I a practicing lawyer? I don't want to be, because practicing lawyers basically, if you wanted to go, I think I put it in my maiden speech, which highway would you take? The one full of potholes and roadworks, or would you take the the beautifully smooth sealed express freeway. That's what I'm taking. Whereas lawyers have procedures, you know, little laws for this, you know, application for, you know, it's all this jumbo. All these senators get in Parliament and all they do is frustrate the law and put all these bloody things in place. Okay. And people are over it. Whereas you come to the Constitution, get up to the top end, it's a beautiful, beautiful, well-written document. Okay. So let's do a test on this. So I seem to have gone down to a public court on the 23rd of December 2016, while I was still a federal senator. I go down to, apparently I've got to go to the federal court over an alleged bankruptcy matter. Well, first of all, I've never been served a creditor's petition. So under the federal court rules, if you were to enter into that jurisdiction, there was never originating process. What happened to that notice? Well, conveniently, which is coming out in a video that I'm doing, and it is coming out, is Senator Stephen Parry received it and sat on it. He didn't put it to the Senate. So let's just look at everything at law, because if I hadn't been a senator, if I hadn't taken my sworn public duty to the Australian people, and I was just back on the farm and something happened, you know, maybe I'd just say, oh, look, for the avoidance of getting on with my life, pay the fellow out, or do a deal and move on. You know, that's what you normally do. But this is different. I was elected by the people of Western Australia. I sat as a federal senator. I went to the induction to be a senator. I got the right team around me. I had 5 brilliant constitutional, and I've still got them today. I could go to war with them, although one's has had a stroke, which is sad. He was the one that I had in UK. I'd sent to UK, and you know, like, I've done all this. You know, I haven't. You know, I've done this as an Australian for all Australians. You know, I've actually invested a lot of time and money into this. And, you know, I mean, this political party is something that I've created, not for me, for the Australian people. Look, it might fail. I don't know, but I'm giving it a good go. So far, so good. But so who am I to know that this is what the law says? And then I just accept it, that a public court, like the federal court, can declare a senator of being incapable of sitting in Parliament. A public court can't do that. So let me just take you to this, because it's really important. So when all this stuff was coming at me, we had to look at you know, how we could address certain things, right? So I had to sit back and say, righto, I'm a sworn public officer. I'm a Commonwealth public officer. I must uphold the law, because that's my sworn public duty. Now, I'm going to read this to you. It's page 164 of the Odgers. This was the Senate manual that I had, the 13th edition, 2012, and I encourage any of your viewers to go and look at it and ask them, how may it be otherwise? So here it is. So when all this was coming at me, what do I got to do? I got to open up the book, because the clerk of the Senate said to me, Senator Culleton, you have to do what the law tells you to do. You can do no other. That's all she said to me. That was her advice. And I said, and that's found in my manual. She said, yes, you cannot deviate away from that. She was actually quite good, Rosemary. And you know what? Quietly, she knew of all the improprieties. Don't worry about that. We used to have a few couple of coffees and a Tim Tam down at the office. But determination of disqualification. Let me read it out to viewers. And I want to ask, how may it be otherwise? The Constitution, section 47 of the Constitution, provides that until the Parliament otherwise provides, so that means there has to be a referral. The Parliament has to provide something, okay? So that's when you go in and you put you put it in before the Senate then rule on it, and then they would refer you. They have to uphold section 47 of the Constitution. So let's go. Any question. Well, that's every question, isn't it? Is it not? Any question respecting the qualification of a member of either house and any question of a disputed election to either house shall, that's a command, be deemed by the relevant house. This provision reflects the traditional power of a house to determine its own composition. Where was the referral from the house to send me to the federal court? To declare me like I'm some sort of guy that was insolvent when I'm sitting there on 199 grand a year. My lawyers, we said we're going to pay all the money into the court for the avoidance of, if there is any bona fide debtor that's trying to, or creditor, whatever, anyone making a claim for the, and the judge just threw all that out. I didn't participate in it. So, but if I did, then I've just weakened the laws. So that's why I'm a senator in exile. That's why, they can come and belt my fingers and, hit me over the kneecaps. But what sort of a person am I to go against the law? And so what I did is on the 1st of December 2016, I went around the House and I passed a motion. So it goes down here. It says a motion concerning the qualification of a senator takes precedence as business of the Senate over other business. I have a motion 163, which was successfully passed on the 1st of December 2016, sitting part heard in the Senate. And the Senate has gone along when Odgers says, you've got to deal with that motion 163. So the bail-in laws, everything else that's been going on in that House, it's got to come back, what they say, nunc pro tunc, then for now, retrospective, deal with motion 163, because everything out after that is in effect void because you haven't dealt with business of the House. I mean, do you know how serious this is? But there's a very good point, this, and people would resonate this out of Odgers, which is, I've got to read this to you. It's just beautiful, and people are going to really resonate with this. Okay, the principle that making and changing the laws should require the consent of two different bodies, which is, your two different houses. The requirement for the consent of two differently constituted assemblies is a quality control of the making of laws. Now, you're going to like this. It is also a safeguard against misuse of the lawmaking power, and in particular against the control of one body by a political faction not properly representative of the whole community. Well, hello.
There it is.
Isn't that? Hey?
Yeah, there it is.
How do you get around that? How do you get around that?
I think they're baffled. I think they're baffled.
No, that's right. But at the end of the day, the POMs, I can tell you, I'm not making the claim.
Yeah.
They claim that state of Western Australia is the state of Western Australia. It can't be under the Australia Act. It's a colony. And that's why there's shifting of the Parliament. Labor doesn't shift the goalposts. They remove the goalposts. So you just, you think you're kicking to the bottom, the northern end of the ground. And next minute you're having to try and kick a goal out near the wing, on the field. I mean, you don't know where you're kicking.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing, So the point is we have to come back to keep it simple, stupid, and get rid of this, being so apathetic when it comes to our rights, because, we are really having our rights tested now with the this forced vaccination. And, at the end of the day, people have a choice. If people want to go and get it done, by all means, go and get it done. Am I going to get it done? No, I'm not getting it done. Not at this stage. But then I've never taken a flu shot either. So I have a contract between my doctor and myself, and the law, the Commonwealth law, says that no parliament can interfere or meddle between a contract with my health officer or my health practitioner and myself. And if people don't start upholding their rights now, you know, they're just going to be Australia become a communist country, and we're really there now. And have a look at, people say, oh yes, but you know, everyone seems to just do it. But have a look, there's a lot of people there that want to become a republic in Australia. There's a lot that don't, but a lot do. So the point is, I don't want to become a republic. Am I happy with the royal family? Well, the royal family is the royal family, but at the end of the day, we adopted a United Kingdom law that has gone back in so many in history. It's a beautiful law, and I love it. And when you know it and understand it like I do, there's nothing better. And as Great Australian Party, and with my team, you know, I just want to let people know what they've got, because they don't know what they've got. And that's what I said in my maiden speech. If they don't know what gift they have, how would they ever know that someone's taking it from them? So GAP has to be aware. GAP has to offer remedy, and GAP has just come out with high court cases, and I think it's 51 capital A of the Constitution, plus sedum 28, I think, just off memory. Don't hold me to that. Pretty sure it's 28, capital A. That they can't get over your constitutional guarantees. All people have constitutional guarantees. You know, like Western Australia at 2.3 has a constitutional guarantee, says that if a law or a bill or anything is passed not in Her Majesty's rightful title, it's deemed void. And you go to the Acts Interpretation Act, I think it's Section 5 of the W Acts Interpretation Act, and you go to Crown. Crown means the Crown of the United Kingdom. So why has Labor created this Crown and created State of Western Australia? You know, who gets to change? You know, I can't just go into Parliament and do all that sort of stuff, you know. But these guys come out, they all go in with no money, and they come out, you know, like they can take on the world. So I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Do you seriously? Because it sounds like you're really worried about them seceding from this union per se.
Well, look, we've taken all genuine steps. All our candidates. There was a reason why we nominated for Western Australia, because we feel Western Australia. There's two states that are really quite bad: Western Australia and Queensland. And ironically, they're the Supreme Courts that just took all our farms on non-monetary defaults. It was just disgraceful. And that's when I lost all respect of the courts taking our primary producers. You start getting rid of our primary producers and selling off our ports, what sort of a country are you? And that's what the Nationals, they're for the farmers. And they wanted to, Terry Redmond, who was the national leader over in Western Australia, wanted to sell off the Fremantle port. I mean, how absurd. Because wouldn't matter how well you grow your farm, you grow what yield you might create off your farm, or how good a farmer you are. If you can't send it and put it on a ship, no one's going to buy it off you. You know, you've got all this grain. I mean, domestically, we can't handle all the production. I mean, Western Australia is such a huge driving engine for the economy, and yet it's out of jurisdiction. And that's why we can't get the GST, because the Commonwealth just puts its finger up to, well, pretty much they're out of jurisdiction. That's why we don't get our GST. We just get bits and pieces to make the public think that we're getting something. But in actual fact, if Mark McGowan really looked at where his parliament is and where they sit at law, I mean, no one would have to work again in Western Australia. We've got a big, there's a lot of money back pay with our GST. So, and that's important, because I'm a West Australian. And then once West Australia gets back its GST, then we can actually then give it off to other states, and they can benefit out of it too. So it's taken away from the big multinationals, and that's what Barnaby Joyce loves. He's a multinational hugger, and so is Scott Morrison. You know, they just they do not care about farmers. They do not care about small business. What have they done for them? Absolutely nothing. You know, you can't have that much power in Parliament and do nothing for people.
Yeah, it's frustrating to watch. I mean,
That's it.
during the drought, Alan Jones used to give it to them. He'd get Barnaby Joyce on the line. He'd just hammer him in 2018, 2019. Get the military out here. What are you guys doing? Get some bail. Actually use your resources. But no one takes charge. So, and the crisis in leadership is what I think a lot of Australians are getting fed up with. Where do you see the next election? Like, whenabouts do you see that being held?
Well, I do think there is talk that he'll call it early, but at the moment, he's a ship with a broken rudder.
Yeah, it's
and certainly no crewman.
Yeah, for sure.
So he's a vessel just floating out there. He always says he's a stayer, that he'll go long term. He has come out with that, but I don't know. But I think there's a lot of other things that are going to play out before then, and I do believe we're going to get a finding from the UK court sooner than later. They just can't sit on it forever. So interesting times ahead. People have lost faith in the major parties, but then look at the state election, they all jump to Labor. It's just I haven't sort of quite worked that one out yet.
In 2019, sorry to cut you off, but in 2020, I observed that, basically said at the start of the year, this is about March when the pandemic was on and we had our first lockdown in New South Wales. I said, every election that happens this year, the incumbent will win every single one of them. There were 9 elections I followed, including the Queensland and the New Zealand election that I followed, and the incumbents won massively. The only exception, of course, was Donald Trump, and they've got their own unique sort of electoral system. But the same went for Western Australia. I said, guys, this is not going to be good. It's going to be a bloodbath, because crises always work to keep the incumbents in. They're the best. You never let a good crisis go to waste in getting yourself elected.
Yeah, and this is why we have to take the steps. GAP's had to take the steps that it's done and do like I said, set the groundwork very solid, because there has to be a different approach to the current administration. Just because they're winning the hearts of the people doesn't mean that they're doing it lawfully. And the good thing about having an election, do you understand the jurisdiction of a court of disputed returns? Do you know how that jurisdiction is defined?
Not at all.
That's a jurisdiction that's defined by the Parliament. It's not by the courts. So the courts actually have to have, the legal term is, does an officer sit coram judici, which means, at the end of the day, I suppose, is he a dry blower or a wet blower? He can either do the job or he can't. So he has to qualify to go into that jurisdiction. And that's what I was able to do with the High Court in Canberra. That's why I got the former Solicitor General, David Bennett, who was with John Howard for something like 11 years. And he said, Rodney, you're spot on the money. And for that, I'll go into the court. And we actually had the barrister for the Attorney General. He was actually, his body language, they were shivering and shaking, and they thought, shit, we've never been tested like this before. And Keifel just turned around and says, well, you should have raised it. You should have raised it back then. And then the Solicitor General said, well, he actually did. He put it in an affidavit, Your Honour, and you threw it out. And
awkward.
Then she just sort of said, oh, well, it's too late. See you later. That's not proper. That's not a judicial finding. I'm sorry. So
yeah, that's crazy.
You'd expect better. But it's like people say to me, Heffernan came out and said that he had this list of former prime ministers and all these people that may have been on a list, a controversial list.
Why didn't you speak up about it? I'd imagine a lot of people ask you that.
Why didn't I speak up about it?
Yeah, I'd imagine a lot of people ask you that question at the time with the benefit. They always think hindsight's 20/20 vision.
Well, to be honest with you, I was never asked to do it while I was in Parliament. That's the truth. No one ever came to me.
Yeah.
I only became more aware of it after, with the aligning with the tribal sovereigns and their griefs and whatever,
Yeah.
But they've shown me where it has come out. But and they're saying we have to do this and we have to do that, and the Parliament does nothing. But honestly, if I was to be honest with you, the remedy is right in this book. On the 25th of February of 1988, the Senate waived its privileges under Section 49 over documents in parliamentary proceedings, so inquiries. So, but no one knew about that. Even the former Solicitor General, David Bennett, didn't know that. He said, well, how do we find that? See, this is the whole thing. The judiciary doesn't know about it, but the senators, if they read their lawful book and what their constitutional role and duties are, any person could go to a senator and say, I want you to enact and get the documents that this Heffernan is saying can't be released because of privileges, because on the 25th of February 1988, the Senate all voted that privilege would be raised. It wouldn't be on documents that are held within a parliamentary inquiry. I mean,
so who could get access to that then?
I could send you a copy. I've got a copy on my computer.
But you're kidding. I'd love to look at it because it's.
Well, that's better. That's better. That's better than legal advice. I mean, half these lawyers, you wouldn't get a lawyer putting your crop in the ground. They'd never put the tines in the ground. They'd just scrape across the top, and they'd leave all the fertilizer and there's a good old saying my grandfather used to say, one to sow, one to blow, and one for the crow.
Yeah.
But I mean, these guys would leave it all for the crows. They just leave it all on the top of the ground. They just no offense.
Yeah.
When I wasn't happy in Parliament. These guys are all the same post pissers. They're just different, and they don't read. Jackie Lambie, as much as I like Jackie Lambie, she used to come to me and say, what are we going to do in the Constitution about this? I said, Jackie, you should know what to do. You're a senator. Yeah, no, I don't. I don't have time to read the Constitution or Odgers.
Uh-oh.
So what happens is you get these plants that become advisors, and they start manipulating them. Mate, it's an incestuous pit. But all I know is that with my actions, it took out a whole heap of parliamentarians. It certainly, and Bob Day would vouch for that. I speak to Bob Day quite regularly. Malcolm Turnbull stood down as the Prime Minister after he called the Royal Commission, did he not? See, you can't be, once you're on knowledge of something that's improper, that's when a crime comes in, if you're on knowledge. Then I put a Crimes Act, hadn't been done for 85 years, on George Brandis.
Yeah.
Okay. In the Magistrates Court in Canberra.
Yeah.
Well, what they do, they sent him off to England, High Commissioner. I mean, hello, and then turn around and put the acid on Stephen Parry to summons him, and then all of a sudden he stands up and says, "Oh, gee, I shouldn't be the senator." But I get this? Do you think he didn't know when he was making all these alleged referrals down to the High Court? He didn't know he should be writing one out for himself. But in actual fact, being a POM doesn't put you in contravention of Section 44. Malcolm Roberts didn't want to listen to me, listened to Pauline Hanson, and said, no, you better go down to the court. I said, Malcolm, how can you be sworn to a foreign power when Clause 2 of the Constitution says it's the United Kingdom? That's your queen. Yeah. But the nonsense was he'd taken an oath to Queen of Australia. Well, I understand he had. A lot of them are taking oath to Queen of Australia. They're not forming the office, because whether you're religious or not, the oath, everyone has to take an oath, correct? Like if you go to buy a house, you've got to sign the offer and acceptance in your name, correct?
That's right.
Otherwise, it's not a binding contract.
Yeah.
So whether you're religious or not, it's the oath under Section 42 of the Constitution that binds you to the office, because it doesn't, because I can be elected 1 year, another person the next term, whatever. The office doesn't change. It's the individual going in there. So if I play up or whatever, it doesn't alter the office. And that's the same with the Queen. The Queen only holds the office. I mean, once the Queen goes, someone else, Prince Charles, will go in there as a king or whatever might happen. I don't know, whatever he's going to be, or it's the office. So that it's the oath that binds you to the power of the office. That's your contract. And if you breach that contract, you're then subject to the Crimes Act, and you go Treason Felony Act, because you just can't essentially go writing checks out for 555 million for some Great Barrier Reef, study for your mates or whatever. Old little Malcolm, the biggest Republican in this country, did. You can't do that. So there has to be accountability. But Australians just seem to think, well, yeah, she'll be right, mate. But it's not. And that's what I saw. And,
it's funny.
quite honestly, it is hard to live with a bit.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, no one knows the origins of, she'll be right. That was what the Anzac used to say in the Middle East when they had the German, the desert fox, Rommel, coming down on them. She'll be right. That meant dig deep. We're going to hang in there. And they did hold on to it. And that led to the quote from Rommel saying, if I was to take hell, I'd use the Australians to take it and the New Zealanders to hold it. She'll be right isn't like put it on the back burner. And it's always frustrating me because a lot of Australians that maybe look more Australian than myself don't understand that. And it's very frustrating because you guys don't, not you guys, I say Australian, a lot of Australian kids being raised, as you said in your maiden speech, they just don't know their history. And it's very frustrating because what we've got right now is a blip in history.
But look, Motion 163 is a High Court Parliament court order. It's sitting there part heard. That's actually going to be a saviour to all my issues, and that's why I want to get back into Parliament and get that done. But certainly holding the West Australian to account under CO 588/2020, which the Supreme Court, basically took all our farmers' farms, and as the Royal Commission found that a lot of the banks didn't have a right to their farms, but the judges haven't come out and said sorry. We're going to call certain judges to the chamber again. I tried to do that under Section 72 of the Constitution, Section 44, to bring them to explain under Section 72, because no one's above the law. But it takes a lot of guts to do that. But it's not about having the guts. It's about doing what's right. Because, like I said, once you give your oath, you sort of go through and you look at what Labor has done, when you look at the Crimes Act, and you see that they've actually repealed a lot of the heavy laws that apply to you as a parliamentarian. They've actually repealed a lot of those laws. But then the lawyers say, oh, yes, but they repealed those, that you can't bring them back. Well, in actual fact, you can. The Acts Interpretation Act, Section 7 says if it was in law before, you can invoke it as long as you carry that into the court. Yeah. The issue is you're carrying it into an Australian court. You've got to get into a Commonwealth court, and there's no Commonwealth courts in Australia, and that's the problem.
Interesting.
It is interesting, and people say, well, let me tell you, people say, Culleton's been in court for not a lot of times, and he hasn't had too many wins. Yes, but I've educated myself, and I haven't had too many losses either. Like a lot of the matters aren't finalised. Yeah. And what I thought, where are they getting me? You're holding these judges to accounts, because when you put a spin, we call it the Shane Warne approach, when he came out and he got his maiden hat trick, and you put a ball you spin a ball to the judge, and you say, Your Honour, are we hearing this matter today in Her Majesty's rightful title? And then just look at his body language, and he starts to go on. He's like he just starts to tumble, and it's holding him to account. And then I thought, well, they said, yes, but you came to this court, Mr. Culleton. No, I came on a qualified appearance subject to the jurisdiction being defined. But this is how it's all about contract, because everything in life is about contract. And that's what we learned as a senator. Everything is offer and acceptance. And it's just a general term. If you said to your children, go make your bed, you know, he goes and does it. You've actually, in effect, contracted with him. So, and he fulls it. Or if he says, yeah, I'll do it after I go and see Mum, I delivered the lemons to Nana next door, that's a condition to the contract. So if we can tell people everything's about contract. And I thought, I'm trying to work all this thing out. And then it dawned on me, when you go to the registry of a court, you go in there and you say, I want to file an originating application. Or if you're going in there to defend, they tell you, but they say, yes, okay, well, Mr. Culleton, you have to fill out a Form 13. You have to download it off the court portal. Is that correct? That's the contract. Then you've got to fill it out and you've got to sign it, Mr. Culleton. There's the offer, acceptance. And Mr. Culleton, yes, there'll be a filing fee of $1,200.
Yeah.
There's the consideration. Go and take a ticket, go over to counter 8 and pay the consideration. What have you just done? You've just contracted to be dealt with under Australian law. That's how they're getting us under this nonsense law. So we have to, it's sad that the Senate is not doing its job. That is the problem. The Senate, if they applied what they were elected to do in Odgers, the courts could not get away with this. The states could not be usurping the powers of the Commonwealth. The states are more powerful than our Commonwealth. I mean, what does that say? That's why ScoMo gets told to piss off, stay in Canberra. Yeah. He's just like, he's hopeless. And they know it, but it's coming out. You can't be outside your law. I mean, you've got foreign trade, you've got all these things, and that, love, hate, or think any different of Donald Trump, mate, I'd take my hat off to him. He was coming back to the fountain of justice and the rule of law and reconstituting the courts, because that's what affects people's rights. People will always think about what a court order says before they think about what the Constitution says, because they're indoctrinated with this, because the judges said it, it's got to be right. But half these judges go to sleep on the bench. They don't allow affidavits, or they seal affidavits. They go on for years. You run out of money. That's not justice. That's just disgraceful.
Yeah.
And yet the Senate could open up a court tomorrow, engage all the country courts that sit as circuit courts, sit 1 or 2 days a month. They could reconstitute those, express people through, put three JPs, because that's 3 justices of the peace, swear them under the correct oath of the Constitution and the Commonwealth, and get on with it. But the senators won't do it. They all need to be sacked. Yeah, senators. They're just disgraceful. But anyway, I've had my perhaps my win for the day.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to not be too heavy with your viewers, but they're just going to have to. When someone says trust me, I never say to people trust me. Yeah, just have faith in what GAP's doing and watch the steps and genuine steps that we're doing to we've been we may have lost a few battles, but we haven't lost the war. Yeah. And GAP's about winning the war. It's not worried about the battles. It's about the war.
I think that a lot of this has been quite heavy, which I don't think is going to faze too many people. And I'll tell you why. I think that, and this is the gap I'm trying to fill. Excuse the pun. It's being able for people to see you exactly for what you are. And it's someone who's very frustrated with the Constitution, very frustrated with its execution. And you started a party with experience behind you that is attempting to bridge that gap between Canberra, the politicians and the people. That's what I see from this conversation. I really do, and I can't help but feel a similar frustration. It's just incompetence. Like, I shouldn't be talking about this stuff. You know, we trust Canberra to do the job. That's why we pay them so much. That's why they get parliamentary pensions after they leave. It's meant to be a service, but you know, they treat it like it's their own piggy bank, their cash cow. And it's not a uniquely Australian problem. It's something we're seeing at 10 Downing Street in the UK and obviously Washington DC in the USA. And I feel like there is going to be what I like to call a populist sort of, I call it revolution, but it's not as violent as you might think. A populist revolution that will sweep a lot of this and clean a lot of this up. Do you think that there is a closing window in terms?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the UK with Brexit, okay?
Yeah.
The English people realised that they needed to come back under their law and protection of their rights under the laws of the United Kingdom, under protection of their Westminster system. And while they had been in the EU, Labor put them into the EU. In actual fact, England, the UK went into the EU at the time when Whitlam removed. Whitlam was the secret letters of Whitlam. We've got all the secret letters of Whitlam. You know, they said they had to go to the High Court and all this sort of stuff, that professor, but we actually had them.
Yeah.
We got them out of the Parliament. But you know how it's all you have to do, you know, when you look at, let's get it right. Let's just get it right for your listeners. An Australian court has jurisdiction to hear a matter like under a corporation. So if you have a company, you know, Joe Blow Proprietary Limited, or that's been governed and created under the Corporation Act of 2001, that court has jurisdiction to hear that matter because it's an Australian entity being dealt with a jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Okay. But when it comes to our fundamental rights as people, because at the end of the day, we create the Parliament through the Westminster system and whatever, the Constitution applies. Okay. When it comes to our free speech, democratic rights, how we live our lives, you know, dealing with overseas, that's different because we, in effect, the Parliament is what they call a constructive trustee. So they hold it on behalf of the beneficiaries, which is the people. We should be capturing all that wealth because that's what creates our communities and schools and whatever. So that everyone knows that. So you can't say the courts don't have jurisdiction to deal with an Australian matter.
Yeah. But
when you have a prime minister, which I've done 2 documentaries, I've done 3 documentaries on this. I've actually done 3 documentaries, and I've tried to explain it well and how we've gone off the estate of our protection under our Westminster system. But if we were to turn around and say, you know, when Whitlam, a prime minister who's elected by the people with the Royal Styles and Title Act, removes the word Commonwealth and pokes in Australia, that's like when you're signing on behalf of a company, if you don't put the correct name or the entity or whatever down signing that, then it's, or you come out with Joe Blow Limited, Joe Blow capital A Proprietary Limited, looks the same, but it's a different beast. And that's what he's done. He's taken out the words Commonwealth, which is the people's authority, and put in Australia in the Royal Styles and Title Act, 1973. That's why he got sacked. You know, come on, let's all look at it. That's why, but that's where he put us into a de facto republic.
Is that right?
So from then, yeah, so the people have been under the Parliament. They haven't been over the Parliament. So that's why we're not operating under a Westminster system. That's why the High Court of Australia hasn't been operating under a UK jurisdiction under 77I.
And
it's really bad. And like I say, I don't make the claim.
Yeah.
The Constitution and my Odgers makes the claim.
Yeah.
You know, I'm only telling you what the law. Hey,
does this come out in the letters at all?
I've done a petition to the House of Lords in London. I've done some really extensive work, and they've been absolutely blown away with it. So, but that's all been filed with evidence with the UK matter. So, look, you know, we're not on a flogging to nowhere. We're just basically gaps about the restoration of the Commonwealth. Bring back the Commonwealth, you bring back the authority of the people, and then the government can't do things that they're trying to do. And that's why we've come out with a policy on, you know, voluntary vaccination. You have a right to choose. And if what's his name, the CEO, Joyce, says you can't come on my Qantas plane, you just say, well, then how do you get around my prohibition found under my constitutional guarantees, which I know all sounds heavy, but we've actually spelled it out in our policy. Yeah. So we're actually putting a message there so people go, hey, they can't tell us that, because once people know that they have the power, they'll have that much more spring in their step. It won't be funny. Yeah. You know, it's like once you know you're in control, but people walk around, you know, quite, you know, dismayed about everything because, you know, they don't know what to believe anymore. And when you don't know where you stand, then obviously you're not in control. Yeah. And gaps about getting people back in control, because you are in control of who you are. Yeah. And you control how your country wants to run too. It's your country. It's our parliament. It's not theirs. That's right. They say it's their parliament. I mean, how disgraceful have they been?
Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. In the short,
it was funny because you know, Barnaby Joyce was walking down the corridors of Parliament, and Wacker Williams, because I know Wacker comes from Inverell, and I got on quite well with him through the commission on the banks. And I actually said to Barnaby Joyce, I said, "Oh, you're looking a bit sad today, Barnaby," because he always looks sad. And I said, I didn't come up with, you lost $1 million at the races, or yeah. I said, oh, it looks like they've removed bangers and mash off the parliamentary menu. He didn't take good to that at all. So that was before everything was released.
That's how you know he's not from the outback. He can't take a joke.
No, he can't. He just can't. Oh. So I guess, look, I'm not trying to say I'm better than anyone else. I've gone to Parliament, you know, I've gone there, I've witnessed it, I've sat in the chamber. Yeah. You know, I've seen how it all plays out. I see how the senators for the major parties do what their party tells them to do. Yeah. We've actually got Michaelia Cash. I actually said to the Prime Minister, she should be the Attorney General. I actually put a media release out with her text. I can send that to you, which I said to him, but she was aware of the problems in Western Australia. Being a West Australian, I had plenty of meetings in my office with her, and she knew that I could never be sent down to a public court over a matter of Section 44 until the Parliament had dealt with it. And she turned her back on me, like Pauline, and said, look, I know it's not right, Rodney, but I have to do what the party tells me to do. I have to support them, you know. And that's when I just thought, you know, who do you trust in? It's like trying to pull a tractor out of the bog with a piece of, you know, with a piece of cotton. You know, everything just snaps all the time. You just can't rely on anything, you know. I mean, it's really sad. So we have to get integrity, and the only way to get integrity is to get real people into Parliament, true representatives. So,
well, I guess my question would be, what they've been. We've done that, haven't we, in the past? I mean, we thought we were doing that with Pauline.
Well, Pauline turned her back on the Royal Commission. I couldn't believe it, and that's why I had to leave as an independent. I didn't agree with all her policies. This thing about discrimination against Muslims and all of that, I just did not agree with that. I went with her because she would support the Royal Commission, I'm very multicultural. I love all people in Australia. I love them. I'm married to a Greek woman. I have a brother-in-law that's an Anglo-Indian. I have very good friends that are Muslims, and I just have a great life for those people. And you know, I always say, you know, people go about this and that, but you know, I just think it's just such a great country to have a multicultural society. But I can see, you know, I've got friends that are South African and they're voting for Gap because what they fled from, they can see is starting to happen here now.
Yeah.
So, you know, in actual fact, those people are going to probably save the country as well. So we don't discriminate. We don't want people to discriminate against us.
Yeah.
That's why we did the memorandum of understanding with the tribal people. They have their rights and that they believe in, and their law that they believe in. Who are we to question that? They were here before us. There's no doubt. We brought our law over, and how do we come together and walk as one? And you know, until we start doing that and respecting one another, there's a lot of love out there, but there's no respect. And we need to bring back the respect, because respect has to be formed before true love.
Absolutely. Very quick last 4 questions. The 2016 Health Act that basically mandates vaccines where you can be held down and vaccinated. What's your general take on that? Is there a way to get around that in Western Australia?
Yes, and that's why I brought it up before. Have a look at our policy.
Yeah.
They cannot. It's a choice.
Okay.
It's a choice. And we've stitched the law. The highest court in the land has ruled on it. The Constitution makes the claim. The highest court in the land, even when, because I mean, a lot of these court cases were heard back before Whitlam did the switch. But look, you know, there are judges that, you know, have seen the departure and have done their best to bring it to the attention of the public. You know, they can only, a judge can only, it's like a car. If you don't have the key and start him, he can't function for you. He's got to be totally independent, but we have to pick up on what they've done. So the short answer is the law clearly says that the Parliament can't interfere between the contracting parties, you and your doctor. And it certainly doesn't say that Alan Joyce can say, you can't come on this Qantas plane because the law doesn't permit him to say that. Who's he to say, even if he owns the airline, which he doesn't because it's all by shareholders, the law doesn't permit them, because really at the end of the day, the law has to stand up and say, well, yeah, you might own the airlines, but we own the turf that this thing, you know, the airspace or whatever the case may be, and you're coming into Australia. So we have to have the Parliament put the heavy axe down on them. You know, if you don't do this, you can't, you know, that's how we have to look at it.
Yeah. Here's an idea, and feel free to take it. I believe that a great policy would be making sure that when parliamentarians are speaking in Parliament, just like NASCAR drivers, they've got their sponsors, their biggest sponsors on their jacket, the 20 biggest sponsors. What's your thought on using that?
Well, they get around it because it's the party, not them. Although we know that they tend to, you know, they're all like meerkats. As soon as you put them in the spotlight, they're down the hole.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't ever look. I just we don't want those people in Parliament. I can remember when Caro, the journalist for Four Corners, a reporter for Four Corners, wanted to do that documentary on Pauline Hanson on Four Corners, and I said, yeah, okay, but one condition. She said, what's that? I said, you expose Andrew Robb. And Andrew Robb was a former minister for the Liberal Party, and he was the one that was involved in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So he does all that, gets retired, getting paid a pension. He's getting, I think, $80,000 a month being on the board of the company that leased the Darwin port.
You're kidding?
Yeah, go look it up, Andrew Robb. Yep.
Huh.
This is, you know, I mean, look at Matthias Cormann. Look at Stephen Parry, now with the Administrative Tribunal. Have a look where these guys go, mate. They're all on big bucks.
Yeah.
And they've all done the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a mates club. And look, because we don't challenge it, yeah, okay, they get away with it. That's fine. But you know, we can't sit back and say, well, you know, we need to come and say, look, we need to do something about it. And Great Australian Party does not want to come out and just talk and give no remedy. And we want form, so we want to be able to present to the people, but we want substance. We want to be able to bring what the Commonwealth law is, and make sure that we have remedy. People need remedy. They don't need representation at the moment. They need both representation and remedy, and get back under our laws. Because once you create the Commonwealth again, because it's there, they've just parked it, they're not recognising it.
Yeah.
That's why the Australian Federal Police could never prosecute me, because you can't apply an Australian court order to a UK act. It's a nonsense. That's why they never prosecuted me for filling out. I knew all that. And they actually said to me, get in. The actual investigating officers, there was 3 of them, Adrian Bell, Ross Hinscliffe, and I just can't remember the other. Was it Peter Davies? Someone like that. They investigated me for 13 months, and I understand that they've all come out and voted gap.
Term limits? Would you go with term limits as well? Is that a part of your policies?
Sorry, what for being in Parliament?
Yeah, parliaments and senates. How many times you can run?
No, I think if you're well, that's like putting a caveat on a good racehorse. You know, it's like black caviar winks. If you can keep them going around, keep them going around. But doing a good job and you can keep them racing, keep them up in front. Yeah,
there's good arguments for both sides, I think.
Look, we just got to get real people in Parliament that know their job. Just don't get in there and, you know, have all the hors d'oeuvres and the bloody crayfish meals and the wines, and you know, we didn't do that. We didn't go to the ball and all that. We just focused on, pardon me, holding the banks to account. I mean, how good were we taking the shine off these banks? I mean, they were caught red-handed, but nothing happened to them. Yeah. And it even got to the point where the bank says, well, if the government comes down too hard on us, we're going to cut all the donations to the Liberal Party. Well, Australians just have to look. If they're taking the money off the banks and the banks are paying them, why are they paying the Liberal Party and the Labor Party? Yeah. You know, it's just, people got to just come on. It's there. Yeah. And wake up. That's all we're saying. And look, at the end of the day, if I don't succeed, perhaps someone else will run the baton. And I understand you got Ricardo Bossi. I haven't seen any of the interviews. I understand you've invited him on your show. And, you know, that's good. It's getting out there and doing, but as long as he's giving people the remedy, otherwise it's just another, you know, he can go in there with all the good intentions, but if he doesn't have the remedy, he's just going to get pushed out to one side, and then you lose another 3 or 4 years or 6 years or whatever the case may be. So we need to act now. Action is now.
I actually don't endorse any parties per se, any one party. I just, because I've had a very bad experience in 3 parties in the past already. I've been at it for a little while. I say a little while now. It's nothing compared to your experience. But I when it comes to parties, I've got no love for any of them really. And you know what party politics is like, and I'm sure you would have seen a bit of that in One Nation. But no, I try to commit myself more to. Well, you know what the long march to the institutions is. My chief goal is to sort of counter that. It's to educate people on what's really going on, including your message, including some of the good things Ricardo's picking up on, and anyone else that will have these discussions. Because only then, once you change the culture, can you change the politics. Because after all, politics is downstream of culture. But no, look, Rod, this has been an absolute pleasure. You've really taken me to school on a lot of this legal background stuff I have no idea about, and I'm glad that I don't have an idea about, because if I just nodded along, I was like, oh yeah, I'm following you, I think we'd have lost the audience. But I think a lot of people had a lot to gain from this discussion, in understanding that we really are run by some imbeciles, especially in the Senate, that don't read their little manual book because it's too hard and there's no time, even though they're on $200K a year. And I think it's disgusting. We expect better of them, and I wish you guys the best of luck in the upcoming elections in pushing that through. And but no, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
No, and thank you. And if I look a bit, if I'm starting to get redder and redder, it's because the bus is all locked up and we're at 50 degrees. And I might start whistling like the kettle shortly. So it's good that we are winding it together
well. You've kept it together well. So
yeah. So look, and look, it's been. I've really enjoyed having the opportunity to express what I know, and it's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And you know, I do come a bit controversial. You know, I did end up going to the High Court over an alleged $7.50 key, theft of a $7.50 key. It all went to the High Court. So that just shows you how we're so out of touch, and especially, but we did that defending our farms, and we did it rightfully, as we've all been vindicated as farmers, as through the Royal Commission. So I think at the end of the day, that High Court case was over $750,000 over this alleged $7.50 value key. I mean, you know, it's just absurd. And then the government said, oh yes, well, we'll pay you. The government didn't pay anything for over 2 years. And then they said, oh, we're only going to give you, I think, 25% of your costs back. And then I've never consented to anything with my matters because I couldn't, because the law says I had to go a different route, and I could never accept a referral from Stephen Parry, because the Senate, what they call the Senate must be corrate at the time. The Senate, a lot of stuff going through Parliament, the Senate hasn't been corrate, and corrate means it's got to have at least 19 members. And I think people, if they go back and revisit that, would be very happy. So look, there's a lot more. I encourage your followers to go on to gap.greataustralianparty.com.au. We've developed an app allowing them to participate in policies, our policies for refinement, looking at bills to participate, because it's about the people's input into what's going to establish what outcome we have in this great nation. So I've really enjoyed the time, and thank you for giving me the opportunity of coming on your show. I have to say it's been one of the better interviews that I've done, to be honest.
Well, that's what it's all about. And this is the funny thing. If you're how do I put this? If you're full of bull dust, people are smart enough to pick up on that by me giving you as much rope as possible. I mean, I'm not saying that you are, but people can come to their own conclusions. They don't need a snooty elitist journalist to keep interrupting you, not letting you have your say. And that's what I'm all about. But look, stay on the line. But everyone, thank you for watching. And I'm gonna stop recording. But thank you again for your time, Rod.